But whenever you guys are ready, I'd love to see where you're at right now.
Shareout 1, team name to be discussed. So we're going to just be showing our individual research at the moment.
So here is some of the 3 topics that I did. One was, how do people, medical physicians right now, tell their patients that they're at the end of their life. Second is how to remember medical terms. And third is health literacy rates in other countries. So basically, the one on the left is basically just from the abstract of the study done about better ways to go about telling patients about end of life. So one is initiating discussion, 2, clarifying their prognosis, just saying, hey, this is what you have, may die. 3, identifying end of life goals, and 4, developing a treatment plan. And then the graph is a bunch of European countries, and is not shown, but I did a lot more research on the Netherlands and their, health literacy and how they go about telling their patients. And then I also researched how to remember medical terms. So it's just using visual cues, using apps, teaching Latin components, and using self-made acronyms. So those are some of the main things that I learned about.
I'm sorry, I have to hop in and say that when I used to teach medical terminology at Cosmo, I would end up teaching a lot of Latin stuff because it was making it a lot easier. So that's really interesting. That's what they do with patients, though. I was there now, future medical providers they actually try to do with patients, which is really interesting. Keep going. Sorry about that.
Okay, so I decided to do some research about cancer, and the 3 main questions I had while researching was, how does cancer start? How are cancer cells different from regular cells, and how is it treated? So to answer the first question, so there's trillions of cells in the human body. So I did this research beforehand before you talked about cells and stuff. So during my research, obviously trillions of cells in the body. So there's going to be times where the body makes a mistake and it's incorrect DNA or mutation. And in order to deal with that, obviously it self-destructs, or the immune system takes care of it. But there could be a mutation in the gene that responsible for killing itself. And so when that happens, the body either has to take care of it. If it doesn't, the cancer cell can replicate and spread throughout the whole body, and that will cause problems, obviously. How are cancer cells different from regular cells? Regular cells are coded to be in sync with each other. They multiply in an orderly fashion. They know when to stop. They have some type of order to do what they're doing. They have a task, right? But cancer cells, they divide recklessly and very quickly. Their whole goal is just to invade the body. They don't communicate with each other, and they don't stop multiplying like normal cells do. They multiply until the cancer is killed off, or the host dies from cancer. How is it treated? So Jake, he does radiation, which is the main way he treats cancer, and also there's chemotherapy. The problem with these 2 ways of treating cancer is that not only does it kill the cancer cells, it also kills the healthy cells that comes with it. And there's obviously side effects to it, such as there's hair loss, fatigue, nausea, vomiting, and cells like hair cells, bone marrow cells, mouth cells, and reproductive cells. They get hit the hardest because those are the ones that replicate more compared to the other cells. Unlike nerve cells, they don't really replicate as much as those cells. So those get hit as harder than the cancer cells.
Nice.
So I did more research into how information is spread and how specific medical information is usually spread. And I remember during the challenge delivery, that they were talking about that after people are diagnosed with cancer, they're more likely to go online and search up about their condition, and then they just get a huge information dump about everything about their condition. So I found that most medical information is usually spread through social media posts, or accounts, news articles, infographics, and pamphlets, because infographics are, I found that infographics are easier to like show statistics on. Social media posts are the most likely to like be found online, since more people use social media now. And I also found a source that has like a list of every type of cancer and like the survivor rate statistics.
So for me, I was doing more research on patient information intake, so that we can really focus in on patient care, so patient-centered care. So how much information is a patient likely to remember? So 40 to 80% of medical information provided by a healthcare professional is forgotten almost immediately. And then surrounding that, there's a lot of factors that factor in. So like stress, like if you're being told like, hey, you have this life-threatening disease, of course stress is gonna come in, and then anxiety, things like that, and then age-related memory function. So how in the study it talked about older people nowadays are more likely to go to a library to look up something, whereas younger people were using more TikTok, Instagram, and things like that. So when thinking about how you're bringing news to a patient, you also have to think about who that patient is. So that also goes into patient-centered care. And then how do professionals bring information now, and kind of how have healthcare in general lets the patient know that they're at the end of life. So currently, I believe Jake spoke on this, they're valuing more technical information delivery as to like communication and like actually sympathizing with the patient, because as a doctor, you can't go and say, I know how you feel, unless you actually know how they feel or have gone through it yourself. So it's a lot of like sensitive delivery that needs to be thought about when thinking about patient-centered care. And then how is information best delivered? So written information is better remembered and leads to better treatment adherence. So if you're reading something, this is a separate study, not about healthcare at all, but if you're reading something, you're more likely to remember it as opposed to listening to or being told it. And then spoken medical instructions, only 14% of the information is remembered correctly, compared to over 80% with pictographs when they're used. So really just information intake for patient when thinking about patient-centered care. And then I also did cancer research. Yeah, okay. So thinking about, DJ already spoke on this, we both did some cancer research about what cells control, like when it's time for a cell to die in a normal cycle, and then if there's a mutation in that specific protein, then it causes cancer cells, mutations, or just those cells to constantly replicate and not die off. And same goes to like if a stem cell is being told like, hey, you're gonna get stem cell, it can be a mutation that causes like it's similar to like if you have bone cancer, then there's a mutation in that stem cell, or like stem cell. And yeah, this is repetitive of what DJ already spoke on. Oh, and then just graphic. You showed this yesterday, but this is kind of a different one, but also it says the same message. So normal cells versus cancerous cells. No, you're fine. Yeah. And then what are we thinking? So we were brainstorming ideas about how we see this in the future. So what do we want to present as a group? So we have pamphlets, animation, crash course for the physicians, or a script to follow for the physicians. So how best to break news when dealing with patient-centered care. The pamphlets, they already have pamphlets, but from our understanding, they're not really like civilian literate.
They quite honestly suck.
Yeah, they're not.
Hope you guys put that in your final presentation.
They just need to be they kind of don't follow a target audience. So that was things that we were keeping in mind. And then animation, how different people best take information. So they have where they follow a 6th grade reading level, but also thinking about that, why not follow a similar structure, but for visuals. So that's where we were thinking about the animation, and then crash course for physicians, specifically on patient-centered care, how to deliver information and in a way that's effective, not only in memory, but also effective in giving the patient hope when receiving treatment or being told, like, hey, this may be, or like having the end of like discussions, should I say.
So here are some of our next steps. Interview Mr. DeSantis and then also the other Campbell. Yes. And then also research, patient-centered care, and then also what are other people doing or have done, like what I was doing with like other countries like the Netherlands and everything. Challenge definition of like what exactly do we want to show them, and then also solution development of like how exactly are we going to go about doing everything.
Yeah, and then solution development based on like the few options that we brainstormed. Do we want to do all of them? Do we want to focus on a specific age group? Do we want to do something for a specific age group? So like, would a pamphlet be more effective to an older audience versus an animation for a younger audience? And then for kids, an animation might also be like more effective because Anaya brought up the work that she's doing with STEM law, where they kind of don't tell the kids like, hey, you have cancer. So something along that lines. If the parent would like to tell their child like, hey, let's keep it real. This is what's happening. That could be done in like a cartoony way, so it's not like hard facts or having a kid read a pamphlet or anything.
Good work on it. I'm really curious. You guys have a lot of threads that are all really promising. I see like 4 or 5 distinct directions you guys could go in that all are really interesting ideas. You're talking animation, you're talking about pamphlets, but like breaking out by age, this like prepared script that's more patient-centered, an actual like course you could design for physicians to become more patient-centered. My first question, because it feels like you guys have done, you know what research you need to do, you know what directions you want to go in, when are you going to make a choice about what you're going to do? Because I want to make sure you have something. Like all of these things, there's the potential for such great prototypes or something that you could give and show them. And I don't want you guys to just have a bunch of good ideas. That would be great if you could have something that you would be able to like show in particular. Maybe it's 2 things, maybe you can figure out 2 things, but like what stage over the next 2.5 weeks do you guys feel like you need to choose? When are you going to make that choice about which direction you're going to go in?
Hopefully by Monday. So we just I just want to make a pros and cons for like which can be for like best for all audiences, or what can be easily altered, not biased by the public or selected for different audiences, and then just focusing on that and see kind of zoom in on that specific, whether it's a script or animation or anything. I'll zoom in on that so that we have a final solid presentation for our final or even our next Shareout.
That's a good, I love the pros and cons idea. Please keep track of that, because that's a great, those are all great things for people who have not earned problem solving and design credits yet and things like that. I love the idea of saying, okay, by Monday, so you have time to prepare for Shareout 2, so I can actually see what you guys are working on. I guess the question I have is, what would you like to learn more about? I'm trying to put in little, kind of like the cell talks or things like that. Like, what would be helpful for you guys to learn more about as you're going through this process?
Learn more. Something jumping ahead of me.
What do you think, Shweta? What would be helpful to like learn more about in class? When we do our more kind of traditional learning, sit down, I talk a little bit. What would be some topics that could be helpful for you guys as you're like thinking about how to achieve this challenge?
specifics about radiation and how it affects the body.
Yeah, and how each, like, which, I saw a bit on which, like, cells get targeted the hardest when I'm doing radiation to, like, causing hair loss, causing nausea, causing drowsiness, exhaustion, things like that, but kind of more the, not so like physiological, or more in depth in like what's the name of the cells, how, like, so we just know how we can convey that to a patient in a way that they understand. So really just more cell talk.
Like how different types of cancers are caused, I guess.
Yeah, causes. So I'm hearing causes and treatments. You
Yes.
guys learn more about causes and treatments. Alright. So maybe I'll try that in a little more in sarcoma in particular, maybe where we're kind of focusing on. Any other things that would be helpful to kind of have a more formal instruction setting around any topics, any facts, things like that?
That's all I can think of right now.
Do you guys have any other questions for me? Yeah, you're in a good spot. I'm really curious to see where you come out for Shareout too. You guys are free to go.
Thank you.
Good work, guys.